I mean, obviously, speaking on it and being on the front, do you have any aspirations of being a political figure?
I like pussy and liquor too much. I do.
Steve Harvey wanted Bernie Mac gone. At least that's what D.L. Hughley is saying. And he's not backing down. Yeah, you heard that right. Behind the smiles, the suits, and all the kings of comedy love, there was something darker, something jealous, something cold.
One of the interesting things, and I think about this all the time, is from the time Bernie passed till now, certainly I think society has changed, the way they digest entertainment has changed. So I think it would have been difficult. I think a lot of people would have had a hard time with some of the things that Bernie said and tended to things in his act. So
Bernie said in the GQ article that when he got Ocean's 11, Steve had reached out to the producers and said he thought he would be a better fit and tried to get the part and blah blah blah. And that was some underscore that you just don't, because according to DL, the brotherhood that built one of the greatest comedy movements in history wasn't really brotherhood at all. It was competition. It was ego. It was envy dressed up as love.
You consider yourself a king of comedy?
After Bernie left, them same three guys I'm telling you about, the kings, right? Because DL is the greatest. Yeah. There's no DL slander gets tolerated. They came to me. I was supposed to be the fourth king. I got the offer.
Then what happened?
But I turned it down.
Why?
Because you shit on Bernie, and I know the truth. You think I'm gonna let you shit on Bernie and then come get me? I'm the next king? Fuck you. Why? Because the whole time Bernie was here, you was acting like you was funnier than him. The reason you was supposed to go last is because it was your tour. Not it was gonna be called the Kings of Comedy, it was Steve's tour. These are the guys opening for him. That's why it was such a big deal. But you couldn't do it, because you can't beat the best. And until you humble yourself, you will forever be kinged by the king. You stop it. That man was funnier than all of y'all, and y'all thought y'all had one over on him. You thought he was black and ugly, and you were good looking, and he couldn't make it, because you did. And that ain't the way comedy works. The king is the funniest.
And now, decades later, D.L. Hulu's peeling back the curtain. He's saying what people been whispering for years, that Steve Harvey, the man who made himself the face of the group, didn't just compete with Bernie Mac. He wanted him gone. That Steve and Bernie put it in. I mean, they were the kind of guys that they both alpha male. Steve was hot. We had the Steve Harvey show, so we had a national TV show. Bernie Mac was the it comedian at the time. And then DL was hot. He had a TV show. We did it. It was just me, Bernie, and Bernie and Steve, right? And Steve closed.
One time we were playing the Kings of Comedy, and we were in Dallas. We got suites, and I was in the bedroom, and I hear the door open, and I go, "Hey man, you in the wrong room." I said, "I'm sorry," and he said, "Oh man, I'm sorry," and he kept moving around. I'm like, "Who is that?" He said, "Who is that?" I said, "Motherfucker, you in my room." And this boy goes, "Who the fuck you talking to?" I grab a gun and I walk into the room, and Bernie has a gun standing. I'm like, and we both just start laughing at it. And I'm like, "Oh, you."
Let's get straight to it. To the public, the original Kings of Comedy looked like a dream team. 4 legends, Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hughley, and Bernie Mac on one stage. 4 powerhouse comedians feeding off each other's energy, selling out arenas, making history. But behind that laughter, something was off. Because if you talk to people who were around back then, they'll tell you Bernie Mac wasn't like the others. He wasn't Hollywood. He wasn't political. He wasn't fake. He was raw, real, street, the kind of funny that didn't need approval from anybody. And that's exactly why some people say Steve Harvey couldn't stand it. Night before we went out on stage on the King Tour, Bernie used to pat us off. Bernie is athletic dude, so he used to pat us on the rear end like basketball player. You talk about being a witness to it. Let's go back to Kings of Comedy though real quick, cause I was in Chicago on the Steve Harvey show when it was kind of the reunion special about 4 years ago. And you guys talked about what it meant to be on that stage at that time. Really putting a stake in the ground for what are not just excellent comedians look like, But what also black excellence, right, could look like knowing that Bernie didn't get to, experience the reunion with you guys. How do y'all still keep in touch? Well, Steve and I talk all the time. Said and I talk. So we're very close and still keep in touch. Now, obviously, we miss Bernie. The story starts in the late 90s when the Kings of Comedy tour was exploding. Every show was sold out. Every city packed, black excellence on full display. 4 kings running the stage like royalty. But even kings get jealous. Hughley says the energy behind the scenes wasn't what fans thought. He said Steve was always trying to be the front man, the leader, the one the press talked to, the one who introduced the show, the one who took credit for the vision. Meanwhile, Bernie Mac, he was the people's champ. The crowd loved Bernie like no other. Every night he'd close the show and destroy it. Crowds would scream, cry, chant his name, Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. And according to DL, that's when Steve started to change because, see, Steve Harvey is a man of pride. He's polished, confident, competitive. He's the type who needs to be seen as the boss.
And it kept my schedule, it just didn't work out, but I'm glad I didn't. I thought it got to be too messy. And I said it out loud. I think for a while, Club Shay Shay was like Wendy Williams with a weight set. Like, damn, this dude, I mean, it was messy. The reason that those people went on Club Shay Shay in its first iteration before it became successful is because we saw what he did. And the reason I was going to go on it is because we saw what Skip did to him. I said any number of things about the way Skip sunned him.
Is that when he said, put your glass back on or something like that?
That was so horrible to me that I think a lot of people were determined to help this black man be successful because of what had happened to him. And to kind of curate all that bull and have that place that they worked so hard for you to have so you would have your own space be just an amalgamation and curate all the bull that is happening in our community seemed insulting to me.
Right. And we're talking about, man, some of the same people that rallied around him to make sure
all
he was good.
And on that stage, Bernie Mac was the boss. DL says there was tension from the jump. Steve wanted to run things a certain way. Clean, professional, calculated. Bernie was wild, free, and didn't care about Hollywood rules. He didn't play politics. He didn't kiss up to anyone. And that kind of authenticity, it scares people who build their careers on control. So when Bernie started getting more love, when fans were chanting his name louder than Steve's, that's when Steve allegedly started making moves. Dill says Steve's the kind of dude who will smile at you in public but move you off the stage in private. 'Cause like y'all would be together if it wasn't for me. Like, okay bro. You ain't told no one. Nobody coming to see. And the way he tells it, Steve didn't just want Bernie gone from the spotlight. He wanted him gone from the tour. Word is during the height of the Kings of Comedy success, there were talks about contracts, pay splits, and who'd headline certain cities. And that's when things started to get ugly. DL says Bernie found out he was being undercut, that deals were being made behind closed doors without his input. Steve was reportedly positioning himself as the spokesperson for the tour, doing all the interviews, making all the press appearances, while Bernie, the one closing the shows, was left out of the spotlight. And Bernie, he wasn't the type to keep quiet. He called it out loud. He told people, they don't want me here, but the people do. And that's when the distance between him and Steve became real. DL said he saw it firsthand. Bernie sitting in the dressing room, quiet, frustrated, feeling like an outsider in his own success. And while Cedric tried to play peacemaker, DL says Steve didn't care. He had his eye on Hollywood, on TV, talk shows, radio. Bernie was still about the stage. Different goals, different energy, different morals. And when egos clash at the top, something always breaks. Let's talk about what happened next. After the Kings of Comedy movie dropped in 2000, Bernie Mac blew up even more. His set in that film, legendary I Ain't Scared of You, Mother, became part of comedy history. He became a star not just in stand-up but in TV and film. And that's when Steve reportedly started pushing back harder. DL says Steve wasn't happy seeing Bernie get that shine. He wanted to be the one Hollywood called first. So when the Bernie Mac show hit Fox and became a hit, the tension exploded. Steve Harvey was on his own sitcom at the same time, But Bernie's show was pulling better ratings. The fans loved Bernie because he was real. He was a family man without losing his edge. And that ate at Steve, according to Della, because Steve was supposed to be the clean king, the crossover success. But Bernie did it his way. No compromise, no fake smiles, no pandering. There's a story that D.L. Hughley told that really sets the tone. He said during one of their shows, Steve tried to have Bernie's mic cut shorter because he was going too long. Said it was throwing off the flow of the tour. But D.L. said the real reason was because Bernie was killing it too hard. The crowds loved him too much. Steve didn't want to follow Bernie. Nobody did, because once Bernie hit that stage, it was over. D.L. said Steve used to hate going after him. He knew he couldn't match that energy. Bernie was one of one. Now D.L.'s not saying Steve wished death on Bernie. But what he is saying is that Steve didn't mind when Bernie's shine faded. He says Steve wanted to be the last one standing, the face of the Kings, the name people remembered. And in a way that's what happened. After Bernie Mac passed in 2008, Steve Harvey became the undisputed household name. Talk shows, radio, Miss Universe, game shows, motivational speeches. He became America's TV uncle. And yet, for many, there's always been a shadow behind that success. The question of whether he got there clean. Years later, D.L. Hughley broke his silence. In an interview he said, Bernie was the realest one out of all of us. He didn't play the game, and that's why the game played him. A lot of folks didn't want him around because he didn't bow down. And when asked directly if he thought Steve was jealous of Bernie, D.L. paused and then said, let's just say Steve wanted to be the only king. That line right there, it set the internet on fire because it confirmed what fans had suspected for years, that there was tension, ego, and backdoor politics among the kings of comedy. Now, to be fair, Steve Harvey's denied all that. He said publicly that he loved Bernie Mac like a brother, that they never had beef, and that people are just trying to stir drama. He even cried in interviews talking about Bernie's death. But people who knew both men say the energy didn't lie. Bernie was from the south side of Chicago. Old school, no nonsense. Steve was from Cleveland, ambitious, strategic, always moving like a businessman. Two different codes, two different worlds. And sometimes when realness meets ambition, it turns into friction. D.L. said something powerful about that. He said, Bernie was pure, too pure for Hollywood. And in a world full of fakes, purity gets punished. That line hits deep. Because Bernie wasn't the Hollywood type. He was blue-collar funny. He came up through the clubs, through struggle, through pain. He didn't care about playing nice. He cared about telling the truth. And that truth made him a legend. But it also made him a threat to people who built their brand on being polished, safe, and perfect. After Bernie's passing, D.L. says Steve became the one rewriting the story, saying he was close to Bernie, that they were brothers. But D.L. hinted that wasn't the full truth. He said, it's funny how people cry over you after you're gone, but they couldn't pick up the phone when you were alive. That's a heavy statement because it makes you wonder, was there unfinished business? Was there a phone call that never happened? An apology that never came? Nobody really knows. But D.L. sure made it sound like there was more pain behind the scenes than anyone ever admitted. The wild part. Even years later, fans still pick sides. Some say D.L.'s just being messy, that he's trying to stir the pot for clicks. Others say he's finally telling the truth. A truth that's been buried under fame and fake smiles. But one thing's for sure, you can't tell the story of black comedy without telling the story of ego. And when money, fame, and power mix, even brothers start to see each other as competition. D.L. said something else that cut deep. Steve wanted to be the face of the Kings. Bernie wanted to be the soul. And in the end, the face survived, but the soul died. That's haunting because when you think about it, he's not wrong. Steve Harvey is still everywhere, hosting, speaking, inspiring. But Bernie Mac, he's gone. Yet still felt in every room where real comedy happens. Because legends don't die when they're real, they die when they're forgotten. And DL's making sure Bernie Mac never gets forgotten. In the end, this ain't just about Steve Harvey or DL Hughley. It's about what happens when friendship meets fame. When loyalty gets tested by ego. When love turns into silence. DL said, "We were brothers, but sometimes brothers fight, and sometimes you lose the one who never deserved the pain." That's what this really is. Not gossip, not beef, just pain that never got healed. And maybe that's why DL spoke out. Not to diss Steve, not to disrespect Bernie, but to finally say what's been eating at him for years, that what happened behind the Kings of Comedy curtains wasn't all laughter. It was lessons about envy, about brotherhood, about how fame can make even the strongest bond crumble. So yeah, DL Hughley said Steve Harvey secretly wanted Bernie Mac gone. But maybe the truth is deeper than that. Maybe Steve didn't want Bernie gone from the world. He just wanted him out of the spotlight. Maybe he couldn't handle being next to a man who didn't need approval to shine. Because in Hollywood, authenticity is dangerous. And Bernie Mac was too authentic for the game. And that's what made him immortal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think DL's telling the truth, or is he just stirring old ghosts? Whatever side you're on, one thing's clear. The Kings of Comedy will never be the same without Bernie Mac. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in because this is Buzz and Drama, where we bring you the stories